Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Antoine Blonce. I am the technical advisor of the preparatory phase of the new GEF UNDP IMO Globalist Partnerships. First of all, I would like to thank John Lewis and all the organizing committee members of the ANZPAC Workshop for inviting us, John and myself, to this very timely meeting indeed today in Melbourne. And we are very much looking forward to work with all of you guys for the next 3 days. Thanks again for the very nice welcoming party yesterday and for welcoming us again in Melbourne. And actually, thank you very much for the initiative you took to replace the bottle of wine for the speakers to a very nice charity and something organized by UNICEF and other UN organizations. So that's a very good initiative indeed. I'll present today on the GEF UNDP IMO partnerships from GloBallast to Biofouling. Some of you would have heard of GloBallast indeed, and now we are going to start a new project. Well, first of all, why are we all here? Well, today I'm addressing a room full of experts on the topic, and I'm sure you actually all know much more about the topic than us. However, this is usually a slide I start my presentation with to explain a bit what we are dealing with. As you know now, invasive aquatic species transfer is one of the major threats to our ocean, alongside with climate change and plastic, for instance. However, the problem with that issue is that you actually don't see it. A lot of you in the room, again, are experts on the topic, but outside this room, not a lot of people are aware of what is happening. You don't see invasive species, only if it's on the microscope, the picture you can see here. But everywhere, all the time on the news, you would see what happens for oil spill, for instance. Everyone remembers what happened in the Gulf of Mexico a few years back. Even in West Africa, in Nigeria, for instance, it can come up on the news quite often. However, here, usually only outside the world of experts on the topic, people don't hear much about it. So that's one first issue we have to deal with, actually, when we talk about this environmental problem. The other one is that once an invasion has taken place, it's almost virtually impossible, as you know, to get rid of it. So we have to keep in mind here we are working on the prevention aspect, not on the response side. What has been done to try to tackle this issue? Well, it all started a few years back, as you know, in the Great Lakes, between Canada and the US. Some of the species were transferred there, and it all started back in the 80s and 90s. And how to tackle one of the aspects of this was to create this multi-stakeholders engagement called the Globalist Partnership, which I will explain a bit what we have done today. Basically, the funding comes from the GEF, the Global Environment Facility, but also the project is co-financed by partners, such as the private sector, the participating countries themselves, or the IMO Integrated Technical Cooperation Program. The implementation of the project is done through the UNDP, which is the United Nations Development Program. They focus more on alleviation of poverty. And of course, as you know, the consequences of invasive species are dramatic for the economic of countries, and with the collapse of fisheries, for instance, in the Black Sea, or other examples everywhere in the world. So that's why UNDP is quite strongly positioned to support us to implement this project as well. And finally, the execution of the project is done by the IMO, where the project coordination unit of the GloBallast project was based, and where we are now also working to prepare this new project. The International Maritime Organization, most of you would know about it. Basically, it's a specialized UN agency to regulate the international shipping. Basically, we have a whole set of conventions and international regulations on safety, security, and environment regulations. The main ones would be SOLAS, the safety of life at seas, and also MARPOL to prevent maritime pollution. The first phase of GloBallast was created in the year 2000, and it lasted for 4 years until 2004, when the convention was actually adopted. So here it's interesting to see the first phase was running actually before the convention was prepared, and it helped in parallel to the preparation of the convention. It focused on 6 pilot countries throughout the world, you can see on the map, and technical cooperation in those countries, institutional strengthening, and capacity building. And then in 2004, the IMO Ballast Water Management Convention was adopted. To date, it's ratified by 63 member states of the IMO, and they represent 68.51% of the world gross tonnage. And the good news is that after a long wait, it finally entered into force actually last Friday, on the 8th of September, which is a very good news for the health of our oceans, and also the end of a fairly long process when it all started again back in the 90s when we first pointed the issue in the Great Lakes. The convention is now entered into force everywhere. It's mandatory to apply it. The IMO has just released an infographic and a few data that you can find on the IMO website on the implementation schedule. There is still a lot of work to be done on the topic, but of course here we're more moving to the new issue and talking about biofouling now. The second phase of the Globalist Partnerships started in 2008, so long after the convention was adopted, and it ended last June, on the 30th of June 2017. It was a bigger project than the first phase, supporting more countries. Here we worked with 15 what we call lead partnering countries, where we focused our efforts, but in the end we worked with more than 70 countries worldwide to help them implement the IMO Ballast Water Management Convention. So we focus on the policy, legal and institutional arrangements in those countries, and we help them to reinforce their capacity. The project closed, as I said, in June 2017 with a high satisfactory rating from the GEF and UNDP. It was one of the longest global projects they ever funded, and it's often used as an example of good practice on how to implement global projects. And that's how we will design the new project on Biofouling, and that's why I will spend a few slides now to explain you what we have done and how we have done work with the GloBallast project. So it's a good introduction of what we'll be able to do with the new Biofouling project that will come. Our implementation strategy is this three-tier pyramid. We work on the global, regional, and national levels. Of course, first tier is the global level. We are facing a global issue, working with international shipping, which is a global industry, and working with strategic partners which are working on the global level with NGOs and stakeholders like you guys in this room. The second tier is the regional level, which is very important to ensure a regional harmonization and the training for a harmonized implementation of those instruments. And finally, the final tier is the national one, where we focus on our partnering countries to help them really implement the convention, prepare their legislation, eventually in the case of GloBallast, ratify the Ballast Water Management Convention, and do a training, direct training for their port state control officers, for their, all their stakeholders at the national level. And of course, it works in the two way, from tier 1 to 3, and then from 3 to 1. So if you don't have any support at the national level, the regional harmonization cannot work, obviously. And if you don't have the global tools from the global experts available to train people and to share the knowledge, then you can't have any training done in those countries. So this three-tier implementation strategy was very useful for us for 17 years to work on GloBallast, and we have named it now the GloX implementation model. As you can see here, we divided that pyramid into two. It's on one side, it was more the work we focused on our countries, working again at the global level, regional and national levels. But on the other side, how we could survive for 17 years, we actually had only the same funding from the GEF. We never had new money coming in. So we could survive and carry along with the implementation and the ratification of the Ballast Water Management Convention because we had co-financing and support from partners, again on all those levels. One of the main ones was the Global Industry Alliance, where we managed to get co-financing from the private sector to support those activities. And that's how we could extend the project and do all this work until last June. What have we done? And again, here I'm focusing a bit on what we have done with GloBallast, but it can give us ideas of what we'll be able to deliver with the new Biofouling project. We have done a lot of capacity building. Thousands of people have been trained. directly into our lead partnering countries and partnering countries. Here I'll focus again on the fact that we are working for the least developed countries in the world. That's how the countries can receive money from the donors, from the GEF and UNDP. And it's really the main goal of this project. It's capacity building and technical cooperation for developing countries. Basically, how to bring your knowledge from the experts worldwide and from countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, or the US, or the European Union, strong countries in the IMO who are bringing those conventions alive and who have time and resources to spend on those environmental issues, to those less developed countries who would not have the same support at the national level, the same political will, and the same funding at the national level to try to be able to work on those topics. So capacity building was our core work. Of course, we developed a series of training packages to train our countries on all the different aspects of the convention. Of course, it was a 17-year-old project, so we started from an introduction training on the topic until the most recent one, training on CME, compliance monitoring and enforcement, with the latest development on sampling and analysis for ballast water, for instance. We also developed a series of publications called the GloBallast monograph series on a lot of topics. We started with support, again, directly to our lead partnering countries, explaining them how to prepare a national ballast water status assessment, basically to know what the situation is in their country right now regarding this issue. Economic assessment for ballast water management. This was quite a powerful publication and a powerful tool to help those countries actually ratify the convention, try to raise awareness as well in their countries, comparing the cost of impact of IAS in their countries versus the cost of ratification and implementation of the convention. Developing a national ballast water management strategy to try to have an action plan in the country to train, again, the people, have all the stakeholders involved through a national task force, and eventually prepare the legislation, ratify the convention, and implement it. A toolkit for the legal implementation, again, to support this aspect. And then some more, say, technical and scientific publications as well on risk assessment, port biological baseline surveys, sediment reception facilities. So all this set of publication has been translated into Arabic, Chinese, Spanish, and Russian. They are all available on the GloBallast website. Although now the GloBallast project has closed, the GloBallast website is still live. It has been archived, so all our publications are there and available for download for free. It's globallast.imo.org. Of course, now you have also a link on the IMO website for all those documentations. So this was really, again, something we developed at the global level with global partners, such as the WWF, IUCN, global experts helping us to develop those publications and tools to bring the knowledge to our developing countries, partnering countries. A bit of focus on the Global Industry Alliance, what we have specifically done with the funding from the industry. Well, we work closely with the shipping industry to try to address their specific needs as well. That was the good point of being a project and not part of the IMO Secretariat and working solely for the IMO member states. It was good also for us, for the project team, to be actually based in IMO, where the regulatory procedures happen at the Marine Environment Protection Committee, MEPC. And we were lucky to have this position where we were sitting with all the stakeholders. We could speak to everyone and try to gather everyone in the same room, a bit like what we're doing here for the end of the week. So this specific partnership designed activities addressed to specifically address the concerns of the shipping industry. One of our main results through the GIA was the creation of the Global Testnet, which is a global association of testing organizations who signed now an MOU and who are working together, although the project has ended as well. They are still working together to harmonize and make testing procedures worldwide more transparent. We're quite lucky to actually have a member of the Global Testnet in the room. So Mario, you're here with us today. You have been involved in this Global Testnet for many years. So we're very lucky to have you. If you have any specific questions, you can talk to Mario during the break as well. But basically, to make the long story short, the main concern of the industry at the time was that no treatment technologies was available at the beginning of the convention. A lot of people are saying, okay, why does it took you 17 years to implement this convention? We have to remember it was a very ambitious convention. When it was created, no treatment technology was actually existing. So what I usually say is that it actually only took us 17 years. It's a very short period of time when you think about it, to have all those member states gathered in one room and agreeing on the single text, having all those member states finally ratifying it and starting implementing it, and have all the stakeholders working together, from the shipping industry, the technology developers, the academia, the research and development community, to try to get to something that is actually now working. And this global testnet was very important to address this issue where the shipping industry at the beginning was saying, okay, what tells me that if my treatment system is tested in the US and it passes, if it tested in Korea, will it pass as well? Maybe it will fail. And there was this feeling from the industry that the testing organization was maybe not communicating enough among themselves. So that's why we could specifically address this issue, and we gathered the testing organization in the same room. And they are now working all together. You have their website, globaltestnet.org. It's an open and transparent group. All their minutes and reports from the last 10 years are available on their website. The steering committee and the chairman and secretariat are working together to promote this harmonization and transparency. They are publishing papers and scientific papers together. They are sharing standard of practices. We're also lucky to have here someone from the PML, Plymouth Maritime Laboratory, who are actually right now the secretariat of the global testnet. So we can see already some linkage, and we can see that some partners could be similar between GloBallast and GloFouling. And again, this is just an idea of what we have been doing with GloBallast, and see how maybe we could replicate these efforts with the new project. An expert workshop on port-based ballast water management contingencies. That's something else we had done as well through the GIA and the GloBallast project. You can see here the picture of the first expert workshop that was about 5 years ago. And now here you can see a product developed by Damen in the port of Rotterdam. Which is actually now been tested and working, and it was just a couple of months ago they released the final product. Basically, again, the shipping industry here was concerned that, okay, my ship arrived in port, the port state control officers come on board, realize there is a fault, the system is not working for any reason, and I'm not allowed to discharge. Then, of course, there is a lot of delay involved, and it's a big loss and cost for the owner. So this idea came from brainstorming between the GIA members and task force and the GloBallast team, and we came up with this idea of developing this port-based contingency measures. Basically, you would have this kind of barge or truck on the wharf that would have a ballast water treatment system installed on board. They'll plug into your ship, and you can clean your ballast water as you discharge it, and then there is no loss in the operation time. So again, this is a kind of innovative thinking and brainstorming that happened within the project. Another thing, of course, we developed with co-financing, thanks also to the GIA, was our website. Again, it's archived now, it's available, globalast.imo.org, where you will find all our publications I was mentioning before, but also our e-learning course. We made a e-learning on the operational aspects of ballast water management, which has received the CPD certification from IMarEST. It's 4 modules, from introduction, again, to more detailed into the CME and sampling and analysis, and you get a certificate of completion upon the completion of the training. It's quite a full training. It takes at least 1 or 2 hours per module. It's 4 modules, and again, we could bring the knowledge to more people. So a lot of people were logged in from everywhere in the world to try to train on this topic. One important aspect here is that you can actually download the e-learning course. Again, everything is free, of course, and we share the knowledge. And you can use it offline on your computer once you have downloaded. For us, it was, and for the shipping industry, it was the main aspect of developing this course, to actually train the seafarers on the topic. Because once they are on board, usually they don't have internet connection. So small details that we wouldn't think about maybe, because we always have access for internet. But having this product available on a USB stick and sent to our developing countries, or being able to download it and even use it offline for seafarers, was quite actually a powerful tool. Another partnerships we have developed was with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. I was showing at the beginning the map of countries we're working with, 15 of them worldwide, 5 strategic regions. But at the end, I said we worked with more than 70 countries. How could we do that when the initial design of the project was, and the initial funding was designed only for 15 countries? Is that again, we managed to bring co-financing and support from other partners. The BRD, for instance, helped us develop a dedicated training package as well for their region, and we did activities in Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, and Georgia, thanks to this new partner. We also developed a guidance document on infrastructure investment for international financial institutions, and we hope to work as well with them more in the new project. Development of joint publications, I won't spend much time on this one, but again, we tried to share as much of the knowledge we had for two reasons. One was awareness raising, as I mentioned in the beginning, to try to get the worldwide community know about this issue, but also share the knowledge with our least developed countries and partner countries. Organization of global events. Again, here you can see alongside the presentation, keep in mind always this three-tier level of implementation from global to regional to national. And these global events were very useful for us to actually bring those three levels in the same room, and all the stakeholders from private sector to governments to academia and shipping industry, to have everyone in the same room and share the latest knowledge on research and development on ballast water. Our main event was the IMO GloBallast R&D Forum. We organized 6 of them. The last one was last year in Canada. We also organized the International Conference on Ballast Water Management, ICBWM, with the Port Authority of Singapore and DHI in Singapore every other year. Now it's very good because we teamed up with the IMarEST to keep on organizing those events, and hopefully next year new ones will be organized, although the project has ended. Here it's quite important as well to underline the fact that we are looking for this strong strategic partnership to try to sustain the effort that we have been doing for all those years, because of course a lot of people were starting to complain that the project was ending when the convention was entering into force, when really the actual work will start to start. And well, the fact is that from the donor point of view, the funding was not renewed. We had this initial pot of funding and we never had more funding. So GloBallast should have stopped already 5 years ago. So we're quite lucky to have all those partnerships and co-financing to keep us going. And now we're very lucky to have these partnerships as well that will keep the work that we have developed, like the global testnet of the IMarEST, to sustain those efforts. Another thing we've done, and which is also linked with the global and national and regional process, is this regional training that we had. So we trained 10 of our different countries all together in a regional training. This one was in Turkey, where we also used the IMO media team to shoot a video of the sampling analysis hands-on practical training. So this was very, it was an interesting training on many levels, because of course this video was seen by a lot of people, and again, awareness raising is very important on this topic. We did hands-on practical training, so not only everyone having here sitting in a room, but we also actually went on board ships in marine laboratory to actually show the port state control officers and the marine biologists of our developing countries how the work was done. So that was a very good idea and a very good training we did as well under the project. And you can see the video on the YouTube channel of the IMO. Another video we have done was the IMO BBC documentary called the Invaders from the Sea. It's a bit outdated now, of course. It was produced during the first phase of the GloBallast, but if you haven't seen it, I really recommend you to see it. Even if you're experts on the topic, it really helped us, and still now, it still helps us to explain what the issue is to people who are not aware about it. And it's very powerful because it's not only to raise awareness on the topic, but it's also powerful when you show it to decision-making people to actually understand what the issue is, and actually, if you have eventually to ratify the Ballast Water Management Convention or implement its regulations, if you show this documentary, usually it opens a lot of doors. And we have received also a few awards, which is always gratifying for the project team and the partners, but also, again, it's always a good opportunity for us to advertise the project and the work we do. Eventually, the Global Project Task Force reunites all those levels I was explaining, the lead partnering countries, focal points at the national levels, regional coordinating organizations who are working with, who are helping us organizing all those activities worldwide, and the global strategic partners. This was our last meeting in Panama this year for the closing of the project. And eventually they own the project. We, the team, just implement the activities we are told to implement. We worked on a biennium basis, where all those strategic partners, lead partnering countries, regional organizations gathered and told us basically what they wanted to be trained on. When the new topic was coming on emergency measures and port-based measures, we started to do this workshop and report to explain the concept to our countries. When the new issue was coming on sampling and analysis, where new technologies was emerging on sampling and analysis, then we designed a specific training, again, to bring this knowledge to the countries. So it was very interesting to see that flexibility in the implementation of the project and the ownership of eventually the recipient countries and the people who actually benefit from the project. And now that GloBallast ended in June, we tried to replicate those efforts, of course. The first way to replicate it is to try to implement projects with the same structure, what we call now the GloX implementation model. And it's already been done by the GloMIP project, the Global Marine Energy Efficiency Project. It's also a GEF UNDP IMO partnerships based on the same model, working with 10 developing countries worldwide towards a greener shipping. They have this huge conference in September, at the end of the month, actually, in Singapore, Future Ready Shipping. If you're available to go, it's a very good one. And they focus on MARPOL Annex 6 and training, again, of lead partnering countries on the topic. And now what we really are here for this week is, of course, the biofouling issues. So we have been working on ballast water for a lot of years. The international community has been working on it. But now a lot of people are moving to this new issue. Of course, you are all experts on biofouling. You have been working yourself on the topic for many years. But it's interesting to see that there is right now, I believe, a momentum on the topic happening worldwide. Maybe because now ballast water is a bit out of the way. There's still a lot of work to do, but again, it has entered into force last Friday. And people realize that, okay, ballast water counted only for a part of the transfer of invasive aquatic species. And only not even half of the work has been actually done for the last 20 years. So we really have to tackle this other pathway. And how to do that? Well, one of the first tools we have, of course, are the IMO biofouling guidelines that were adopted in 2011. IMO has already started to train countries and IMO member states through their integrated technical cooperation program on the topic and on the biofouling guidelines. But it's only punctual trainings and only at the national or regional level for the moment. So how to try to develop knowledge again and steer the international community reflection on the topic is to try to create a new project that will be the GEF UNDP IMO Globalist Partnerships program. The good news is that a project implementation form has been approved by the GEF Council in May, and they agreed on a budget of almost $7 million to try to replicate those efforts and create this new project. We have just started the preparation phase. So what we need to understand now is that we have 1 year to actually design the project, finish to explain basically to the donor what we want to do and how we want to do it, how we want to use those 7 million and to implement activities. So we are going to design the planning for the project, the size of the team, who are the partners, who are the recipient countries, who we want to work with, and what we want to do with them. We have just started on the 1st of July. We managed to have quite a smooth transition with GloBallast. So again, here it shows all the commitment from actually the donors and the IMO itself to try to keep this momentum and dynamic that was created by GloBallast and all the partners to work on this new issue. We just done a press release, so the word is out there, and we also issued a circular letter to all IMO member states to call for an expression of interest to be recipient countries, lead partnering countries or participating countries. And we start now with my colleague John a stakeholder consultation phase, and basically that's what we're doing here this week with us and at this ANZPAC workshop and all of you this week. We have to design the project document, again what will be our budget, what will be the length of the project, what activities we'll be doing. Basically the full-size project should start towards the middle of end of next year, 2018, and that's when we'll start implementing activities. So now again we're in this baseline scenario and stakeholder consultation phase where we want to know what is happening worldwide on the issue. That's why it's very important as well for us to be here this week to hear all your presentations and see again how we can work and with who we can work to develop this. The time frame, we again have to design it, but it will be about 5 years project, 5 to 7 years. And again, starting middle or end of next year. And with the main focus, we have to keep in mind that the main focus is to support least developed countries. And now with the new focus of United Nations on the SIDS, so the small island development states. And bring support to those countries to implement the biofouling guidelines from the IMO. Basically, we want to bring your expertise to the recipient countries. And that's why, again, it will have, I think, this important role of connecting everyone together and putting all the stakeholders in the same room to bring this global knowledge to the national countries and try to have a harmonized implementation on the issue and try to work together to tackle, again, this threat to our oceans. Thank you very much. My time is up for now. However, we have a lunchtime presentation tomorrow where we'll have a bit more time to explain exactly what we'll be doing during the preparation phase. John and I are here the 3 days, so we can talk again as well during the coffee breaks and lunch breaks. But basically, before I close, I would like to mention the last publication we did with GloBallast. It's this one. It was the GloBallast story, and we call it Reflections from a Global Family. Basically, that's an expression that came often when we talked about GloBallast. It was this GloBallast family of partners, stakeholders from the national level to the private sector, to research and development and academia. And we'll try to replicate again this new family. And by seeing the welcome drink we have yesterday, I'm pretty sure that all of us in this room can do a pretty good work together. So thank you again very much for welcoming us here. And we look forward to work with all of you guys. Thank you.